Good morning, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm James Pitcher. I'm Group Head of Sustainability for Bunzl. I've been with Bunzl now for 6 years. I think the reason why I've been here for 6 years and the reason why I came here in the first place is that I'm a realistic environmentalist. You'll see me taking the paper towels, not using the hand dryers. You'll see me taking a paper coffee cup, not using a reusable coffee cup. So yes, I'm green, but I'm blue as well. And I just fundamentally believe that sustainability makes good business sense, and taking action on climate change and reducing carbon emissions just also makes sense as well. From a business risk resilience perspective, saves you money and operating costs, and can help you win more business. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about our program. I always think it's important when you're talking about this subject to recognize that not many people are experts. There's a lot of jargon. There are a lot of weird terms involved. So if you'll forgive me, I'm just going to spend a bit of time running through some of those terms just to make sure that everyone at least understands some of this crazy terminology that's used. I'm going to talk through our targets and then talk about how we need to work together on this subject. So there are lots and lots of technical terms with climate change, and I'm going to talk through some of them. You may have heard some of these before: science-based targets, emission scopes, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, net zero. What does it all mean? I'm going to give you a very quick and hopefully simple overview. So what does science-based mean? Well, we're going to experience, and we already are experiencing, some degree of global warming. At the moment, our current emissions pathway would put us at 3 degrees of warming, and it's going to continue. A few years ago, the scientific community came together and said, well, that's not good, and I'll show you what the potential impacts of a 3-degree world would look like in a minute. So let's try and keep the limit around 2, or even better, 1.5. So that is, you're allowing global temperatures to increase by 1.5 degrees on average each year, but no more than that. So for a company adopting what's called a science-based target, your target would mean that your company is helping to keep temperatures below that level, below that 1.5 level. And it's really simple what that target looks like, and I'll explain to you what the target is later. It actually equates to an annual percentage reduction in emissions, and you don't need to worry about these temperatures or science-based or things. If you hit that percentage reduction, you are by definition taking science-based action on climate change. So why does this temperature increase matter? Well, if you look at the GDP statistics there of what would happen in a 1.5 degree world and 2 degree world, as a GDP plus 1 business, that's not good for us. These are obviously projections. These may or may not happen. We're doing a great job, and there is a lot of positivity in what I'm talking about today in terms of the action that people are taking on climate change. But there are some significant issues that would happen. And in a 3-degree warming world, well, a lot of these cities on the right-hand side of the slide would experience significant coastal flooding, and sea level rise would severely impact these locations. Good for Canada. There is nothing up there in your country. In terms of net zero, so we have a net zero target. I'm sure lots of businesses have set these. You'll see this communicated. Well, what does this mean? Well, this means balancing the amount of carbon that you produce with the amount that you remove. And effectively, what this is a really long-term target where a business says, we're going to take a number of different actions over the next few decades to reduce our emissions as much as possible. And once we reach the point where we can't reduce any more, we're going to offset a little bit of those remaining emissions. And that takes you to what's known as a net zero position. So that's all that that means. So if business has a net zero target, it basically means it's going to reduce as much as possible and offset a bit that's remaining. What do those emission scopes mean? Well, just to quickly cover this, scope 1 is everything that you burn. It's fuel that you burn. It's the emissions that come from the diesel in trucks, the gas that goes into heating. Scope 2 emissions come from all of the electricity your business consumes. And scope 3 is everything else. This is your employees commuting to come to work. This is how the goods go from the manufacturing location to the business that then distributes them, like Bunzl. air travel for coming to a conference like today. All of those emissions are part of a business's overall footprint. And as you'll see in a minute, that's by far and away the biggest proportion of our emissions in Bunzl. So why do we need to care about this, or why should we care about this? Well, the first thing to say is the world is getting warmer. As I've said, there have already been a degree of warming. This as a graph, as you can see, goes all the way back to 1880. It's no coincidence, regardless of what people's opinions are on this subject, that humans have contributed to this warming. And as you can see on the right-hand side of the graph, it's now gone way beyond the kind of standard deviation that you would expect. And the weather's getting weirder. I'm sure that everyone here will remember the wildfires that turned the sky orange in 2023. I remember being in Toronto that summer, and you could actually smell it in the air as you were walking around. In Valencia, we have one of our Bunzl businesses, and they experienced a year's worth of rainfall, an annual amount of rainfall in 8 hours. And it killed 200 people last year. And this weather impact, or the changing climate, is going to cause mass migration. It's going to cause economic losses in terms of insurance damage. So again, lots of things that businesses need to be aware of and need to think about. A little bit closer to home, you know, I was in St. Louis a few weeks ago, and I experienced my first ever tornado alarm or storm alarm go off when we were in the office. And looking at the statistics, Tornado Alley, as it's known, is projected to move further towards the east, and it is moving towards the east. You can see the map there on the left-hand side of that chart. And why is that an issue? Well, currently in that orange box, and I've converted this to kilometers because I know I'm in Canada rather than miles, a tornado would have to travel 10 kilometers to interact with one human. In the red box, it would have to travel 1 kilometer to interact with 10 humans. So it's much more densely populated. Poverty levels are higher in the red box than in the orange box, meaning more manufactured homes. So you're going to see more impact on more people as a result of the changing climate causing a shift in the way our weather works. The good news in green on the left-hand side is that our emissions could peak in 2025. So they could get as bad as they're going to get this year. But actually, those current emissions, the rate that we're currently emitting, is still going to be high enough, even if they're not reduced, to push temperature increase up to 2.5 degrees. So somewhere between the really bad scenario and the bad scenario. So we need to take as much action as we can as businesses on this issue. Another thing that we're seeing at the moment is a huge amount of reporting legislation and legislation on climate change. You may have experienced this within your businesses. There were 7 items of legislation released relating to climate change in a 27-year period. And in the last 11 years, 2019 to 2030, you've seen 31 items of legislation come in. So the regulators are starting to take more notice, our investors are starting to take more notice, and their expectations on us in terms of the targets we have, the progress we're making, and the reporting we're doing has really ramped up. So what do our targets look like at Bunzl? Well, Bunzl's carbon footprint looks like this. Every single truck, every single warehouse, every single office that we have in our business contributes just 1.5% of our total emissions. So 98.5% is in that scope 3, that everything else category that I talked to you about. And 81% of that comes from the products that we supply to our customers, that come from our vendors like yourselves. That's from raw materials, it's from the manufacturing processes you have, it's from the product design, it's from the 5% of the emissions is the shipping to Bunzl. And to give you a bit more context, that 1.5% that is the whole of our business in terms of emissions, our largest supplier is 5% of our total emissions. So our largest supplier is more than 2.5 times the size of Bunzl in terms of its carbon footprint. So the work that we do within our supply chain with our suppliers is really important. We have what we call best practice climate change targets. These are externally verified. These are science-based, as I said, in terms of what we're looking to achieve. And they've been externally approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative. which is something that our investors really like. And we've supported by a further commitment that we're going to buy renewable energy across our business by the end of 2030. Just to show you some of the things we're doing, every single one of our business areas in the group has its own carbon roadmap for how it's going to be reducing emissions. As I mentioned, we're buying renewable energy. We're changing company cars to electric options. We're generating our own renewable energy where it makes sense and where the sun shines. We're installing efficient lighting and using alternative fuels in our trucks. In terms of what I want you to know about is the work that we are doing with our suppliers. So we have a target that 80% of our suppliers by emissions will set their own targets by the end of 2027. So that's just setting a target. You're demonstrating a commitment to reduce your emissions in the future. That 80% accounts for just 900 of our 15,000 suppliers globally. So it's a really small group. Our top 10 suppliers in Bunzl are 25% of that 80. So we really do expect the largest organizations that we work with, the vendors that we do most business with, to be taking action on this issue and to be setting the right kind of targets in our business. We're using a new platform, a new software platform for data collection and monitoring and finding out where suppliers are in terms of their targets. That's called Avetta. You'll know if you are in our group because you'll receive an invite and an email from Avetta saying, hey, we want you to sign up to the platform. It's completely free. And there's a really simple questionnaire that we just want to understand where you are at on your journey. And it's okay to say, we haven't started yet. We're not expecting people to have done this. We're just expecting people to take action if you're within that group. And why is that important? Well, I mentioned earlier we have a net zero target. Our net zero target is to 2050. And we've mapped out roughly what we need to do to get there. The dark blue bar shows our baseline emissions in 2019. The red bar is our emissions growth. As you know, we're an acquisitive business. We're doing more and more business all the time with our customers, so our emissions are actually going to go up as we buy more businesses, as we deliver more stuff. And then we've got the bars that bring it down. And this is published in our annual report and our sustainability report if anyone wants to have a look at the detail. But the key thing here is that biggest reduction bar is our vendors setting carbon reduction targets and achieving them between now and 2050. So it's the emissions embedded in your products. It's the emissions that come from your manufacturing facilities. They're the key things, or the key lever that we have to reduce our emissions over the next few years. So, as I mentioned, if you get an invite from Avetta, please register. It's really simple. It takes 5-10 minutes. Answer our questionnaire. That's also simple. That takes 10-15 minutes. Let us know where you are on the journey. There's a lot of help and support available through that platform. You can reach me and my team, and we'll guide you through the process if you need to. If you don't hear from us, you may do in the future, so don't celebrate too early. But do engage with us when you get the opportunity. And I mentioned, we're asking our suppliers to set science-based targets, blah, blah, blah. It's not complicated. It is a 4.2% reduction in your emissions each year. If you achieve that, by definition, you have a science-based target. Our program over the next few years, as I mentioned, it's going to start with registration, telling us where you're at. We will, at some point, be interested in collecting some data in terms of your emissions data. And again, we'll do that through our platform, and we'll keep it as simple as possible. And then what we're going to do is, beyond that, we're going to progressively recognize our vendors who do this. This will become an increasing part of how we assess who to do business with in the future. This is really important for our organization, and we want to work with organizations who are like-minded, who are taking action on sustainability, because as I said, it does just make good business sense. So in summary, we need your support. We can't achieve our targets without your help. I think you can be confident that we're not going to be the only big organization saying to you, we'd like you to take action on this. Our customers have got these targets, so they're asking us. We recently received an invite to tender in the Netherlands, and 55% of that tender was sustainability, the score. was sustainability. 55% of the score that we could achieve was through sustainability. So we know this is going to become much bigger over the next few years. And there are significant commercial benefits to doing this. You know, you'll make financial savings by becoming a more efficient organization. It reduces operating costs, taking action on energy efficiency, reducing carbon. There's brand reputation. You can advertise this to more people. I attended a conference in Frankfurt not so long ago, and there was a supplier of PPE equipment there from Asia. And they had a sign on top of their stand, and it said, "Approved by Bunzl." And lots of people were very interested in going over and saying, "Oh, hey, you're approved by Bunzl. What does that mean?" They said, "Oh, they just buy from us." And so what they did was they said, well, they've approved us because they buy from us, right? You know, that's approval. But they made it look like a compliant program. So slightly disingenuous, but I think in the future we will progressively recognize suppliers who are doing what we'd like them to do from a sustainability perspective, and you'll have that formal approval that you can then share with other people. Look at the work we're doing in Bunzl. We're leading on sustainability with them, and let us help you, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, this will differentiate you from your competitors. So that's it from me, but we're really looking forward to have your support on this important issue. Thank you.